Hi, this is Tara from tarasindependentvoice.com, known here on YouTube as the same thing. I am coming to you with a kind of different video than I usually make. I guess it's kind of a review of The Walking Dead and a theory that popped into my head as I was reading people's comments about who was going to die, who was going to live, and I don't know. I think maybe these two words were said in the same sentence or close together. And I'm not saying this is this is not only my thought. While I didn't read this on somebody else's, and there's only one person I've been reading, but and I can't think of his name. I will definitely put it in a link below. But anyways, it just kind of popped into my head 2 days ago, and I can't get it out of my head. So I'm going to verbally vomit it all over you. Kind of gross, I know, huh? Anyways, my thoughts on what's really happening on The Walking Dead. And this may be obvious, or maybe people aren't thinking about it. Everybody's just like totally focused on Negan, and they have been since he came along. Even before that, people who read the comics knew that Negan was a character that would sooner or later come along, because he's definitely too good to not be in the TV show. I have a theory, and my theory is Negan isn't the head honcho of the Saviors. He's not in charge. There's somebody pulling his strings. And my theory about who that is this isn't even a theory. I mean, it's like a theorem. It's not like complete. It just is a thought in my head. My thought is that it's Jesus, that adorable little guy who kind of pops in and out of the hilltop. If you remember, he met, and I don't remember which cast member or which character he met. It might have been Daryl, but he said, come to the hilltop because we have a doctor, we have this, we have that. Come and see what you think. And some of the characters, or one or two of the characters, like I said, I'm not remembering that, because I pretty much take something in, enjoy it, and it goes, it's a little bit in my head, and then I'm on to something else. I think Jesus is he's the head honcho. Now, Negan is very smart, or at least he seems to be, but he's really brutal. Now, those things aren't mutually exclusive, but I think he's too brutal to really be worried about how to run the Saviors, how to, get them to do what he needs to. I think that's why Jesus is not at the hilltop all the time. What's he doing when he disappears? He disappears for seemingly long periods of time or short periods of time. And I believe he's going to the different satellite sites, like the one that I think it was Maggie and Carol. Was it Maggie and Carol? Was it Maggie and Carol? Destroyed. My husband's sitting here because he's going to chime in. Yeah, wave again. Let me see. Okay. His name is Bill. Say hello, Bill.
Hello.
Hello. When I think it was Maggie and Carol, I know it was Carol, they went to that one satellite. It turned out to be a satellite compound of the Saviors. They thought it was the main compound, and that once they had killed everybody there, which they did, that the the issue of the saviors was over. Now, no, that didn't quite be that wasn't quite the way it was, because the saviors compound turns out to be this zombie infested by choice uh, holdout for Negan and his, I guess, most favored followers, or the followers he feels like he can destroy when he feels like it. But, and this is probably too obvious, but we have Jesus, who, why do people call him Jesus? I think he explained that because he looked like the character, and we don't know his real name, as far as I know. And the saviors, Jesus and the saviors. So is Jesus running, is he Negan's string puller? Like Negan is a puppet, and Jesus is the one who's telling him, okay, we need supplies. We have a lot of people. So I'm going to go out and find other people, and then you and your most vicious followers will go to these places, and you will destroy maybe a couple of their strongest people, i.e. Glenn and Abraham, two of the strongest next to Rick, Daryl, and actually Maggie and Carol. And I'm not excluding other characters that are also strong. I'm just saying these are probably some of the strongest people. These are people who could live. Oh, Michonne, absolutely. These are people who could live without without Alexandria, without Rick. Rick could live without them. But if that if that unit were broken up violently the way they were for at the season 7, the last episode of season 7, and the first episode, the last episode of the first part of season 7, and then of course they ended on a cliffhanger, and then the first episode of the last part of season 7, where Glenn and Abraham met a very bloody, very violent demise. So bloody and so violent that the rest of the season seemed really bland. And even Ms. Heard, who is one of the executive producers, said, we toned it down. We toned it down because people were like, wow, that was like, boom, two main characters, especially Glenn, that people loved, whose wife basically is having a baby, finally some happiness, even though Lori's baby's birth didn't go real well. But they had a doctor at that time, and everything was going to be fine. Well, everything didn't turn out fine. This has been the biggest, scariest villain we've seen. You thought the governor was bad? I would go back to the governor in a second. But no, we have Negan. But it just seems like he's so spot on with what he does that I just think there's somebody else there, and it's not Dwight, and it's not the guy who's a Negan wannabe. I can't remember his name. Do you remember his name? He's the guy with really male pattern balding, but he kind of reminds you of Negan. He definitely acts like Negan. But anyways, that's my theory, and basically it's based on the fact that the saviors are the saviors, and Jesus was the savior, and I don't think Negan is smart enough nor does he have the wish to be the head honcho. He's perfectly happy being the hitman and being the scary one when he has to be. So I'm going to have my husband, who hasn't chimed in yet, to say a few words about why I'm wrong. And it can't be just because you are. Because that's like your mom who says, because I said so. Okay, Bill, move in a little. Maybe we can both get in there. Okay. Bill.
Well, I don't know, but I think Jesus is probably going to be two-faced. But whether he's the face of, the head of the Saviors and stuff, I don't know. I don't know if he's quite that ruthless, but I think he is two-faced.
Yeah, I agree. He's too perfect of a character. Everybody likes him. No, nobody has really focused on him because they're so focused on Negan. You know, what happens when you look one place? Something's happening over here. It's like in The Wizard of Oz. The wizard says, ignore that man behind the curtain. And in the meantime, the wizard's back there pulling all the strings. But who is it? Dorothy, who goes over there and pulls back the curtain, exposing the wizard for what he is, a fake. I agree. There's something not right with Jesus. He's beautiful. He is what Americans would think Jesus would look like. The long hair, the light-colored eyes, the light-colored skin. When in reality, Jesus was probably a dark-skinned man, possibly with very curly hair and dark eyes because of where he was born and raised. So, it's just too perfect of a package. I think Negan is, well, he may be drug induced, and maybe that's why he could take that. Was it a gunshot, or an arrow? I don't know. During the first battle with the Saviors. Another thing I thought about too. Are you listening? Another thing I thought about too was Jesus had, and now everybody else was absolutely armed to the teeth. I mean, full auto weapons, clips everywhere. They had everything they needed to, make a fairly good attempt at taking down the Saviors during this first attack. However, do you remember Jesus' weapon?
He's judo.
No, he had a weapon. He cannot go in the middle of a big gunfight and judo someone. That's not happening. I don't mean hand to hand. I mean, he had a weapon. Do you remember what it was?
No.
Okay. It was a little tiny gun. I believe he also had a weapon over his shoulder, and I can't remember if he used it. If he did, it was minimal, and it was probably when they were breaking out all the windows. And I just think that's so he could show, or at least, since nobody's focused on him, they're focusing on, what's happening at, in front of them with Negan. They're all looking at Negan and seeing where, the people are. And knowing that there's a herd coming of walkers, I just think he chose that little weapon so he wouldn't hurt any of his own people. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I'm not sure he's the savior completely.
Stop saying you don't know.
I think he's just by himself, and he's playing side against side.
To what end, though? What end would that be? What would he get out of that?
At the end, he would be in charge.
Okay.
He'd rule.
Well, what if this scenario has already played out somewhere else, and that's how he got to be ruled?
Well, we don't know what else he did before.
But we do know what else Negan did before. We know he had a very menial job. And I'm not putting down, I believe he was an accountant or a bank executive or something. He wasn't somebody who had a big job. He wasn't military. He might be somebody, and he had to put down his own wife, who turned into a zombie very very early on in the apocalypse, and that probably, along with maybe being pushed down his whole life, because we just don't know a lot of his background. Um, and when I say background, I mean apocalyptic from the time he was putting down his wife, and before that, and even up until we saw him. What happened to him? What made him? What made him be the cruel, brutal killer that he is, and the man who supposedly runs the saviors as the worst badasses, it probably left alive. Are we going to see worse? Yeah, I think there's got to be worse coming, and I know people are talking about the Whisperers, and I don't know much about that because I don't read the comics, and I don't because, and I know you can see one. I do have time to read. I read at night, but I read books to review for this site. You're welcome. But I mean, so we don't know a lot about Negan. Perhaps Jesus was a person in charge of him then. Maybe he was friends with him. Because remember, this isn't like years. This is, I think they're like 2 years into the apocalypse. I think that's what one of the showrunners said on Talking Dead. That it hasn't been 10 years, hasn't been 12 years, it's been 2 years. So the fact that Jesus looks young, for number one, a lot of people look younger than they do. I wish I were one, but I'm not. Um, but maybe somehow they had a connection, or maybe Jesus saved Negan somehow, and the butcher of the apocalypse decided to lay down his whatever and follow him. I don't know, but I think it's a good possibility that Jesus, instead of Negan, is really in charge. Where's he going? Where do you think he's going every time he leaves?
Well, I'm wondering if he's not going to the wolves. He may be the one in charge of the wolves. Because all the wolves have long hair like Jesus.
Yeah.
Trying to imitate him.
Well, that could be it. Although we haven't seen hide nor hair. See what I did there? We haven't seen hide nor hair of a wolf for seasons. What, 3 seasons? 2 seasons? Where are they?
2 seasons, because they attacked Alexandria.
They did, and we killed they killed. You start thinking of the Walking Dead as your family, and you've got to take care of them. I thought that they were all killed in that attack.
Well, a lot of them escaped.
Hmm.
And what's his name let one go.
Yeah,
they finally killed him later, but
that didn't turn out real well. Well, he got bit and turned. Remember, he was it Morgan?
Morgan let him go.
Well, yeah, Morgan let him go because
he put him in a cell.
Yeah, Morgan let him go because, or at least he escaped, because he thought he had talked some sense into him. And as it turned out, maybe he did, because he died. Was it saving the doctor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he died saving her. So And then I think she had to put him down. So it was, or did Carol, or Carol may have ran to the rescue. Um, I didn't think about that. I, I mean, it's an outside possibility, but I just maybe he's running everything. Maybe he's running those two groups. We haven't really seen anybody that I can think of. And how is everybody cutting their hair? They mentioned this on the party for the 100th anniversary. That everybody has perfect mustaches and beards and finely coiffed hair. How is that happening? There has to be more. There has to be, how many pairs of scissors and razors can there possibly be? And in 2 years, I guess everybody.
Well, the blonde girl that Rick liked cut his hair and shaved him before
Yeah,
she was killed.
but she was killed. It's not like they kidnapped her because she was a good barber.
Most men just take their knives and cut it off.
It could be true. But they're still perfect. Like, give me a knife and let me cut off your ponytail and see how you like it. See how I do. And that's a good point. I had not thought of that. And he does have long hair, but I think that speaks more to him looking different and also being as much of Jesus as he can be. I mean, I believe they've said he's a vegetarian, and I believe he is he just is perfect. Who's perfect in the apocalypse? Look at one of the best people we know in the apocalypse, which is Rick Grimes himself. He had morals and standards, and they've been chipped away at little by little by little. And next thing you know, he's a cold-blooded killer. He wants to kill Negan, and I don't blame him. I would have already been like, okay, how do we try to kill Negan today? And my people would be like, okay, and here I am. How do I kill Negan today? But he's not the Rick Grimes we saw on the first episode, which we watched when they had the marathon because it's Bill's favorite episode. It's actually one of mine too. How can it not be? Because it shows you Rick waking up after the fact, which is probably good until he finds out that his wife is with his ex-best friend, who didn't end well either. And then there's all the talk about the Rick who had said the phrase, what is it? I can't even remember the phrase. As it turns out, it's a phrase from the Quran. And the guy who asked, the guy who was obviously of Middle Eastern descent asked Rick's son, and I can never, Carl, he asked Carl if he had any food. And he said that line. And that's the line that Rick said when they had the close-up on his eyes, just his eyes, beet red as can be, and he said that line. That tells me, if that is not just some kind of thing to throw you off, or maybe will happen in 3 seasons from now, that's just Rick dreaming, or Rick's under the most pressure he's probably ever been under. Maybe he's having not hallucinations like he did with Lori, but maybe some kind of well, they always
Flashback.
yeah, no, it's not a flashback because it hasn't happened yet as far as we know. But and then we saw him as an old man, and that was a theory that people have, that, and there's the theory that Rick has been dead for years, and the person telling the story of The Walking Dead is a very old Carl, sitting around a campfire swapping stories with survivors and talking. That's why Rick gets out of every situation, because Carl's telling the story, making his father better than he really was. But anyways, back to the point is this Middle Eastern looking man. And when I say, I mean, that's not racist on my part. I just don't know how else to say it. Is that's what he looked like and that's what he sounded like. And he was very afraid. If you're that hungry, maybe you're not that afraid, but he was very afraid, maybe uh, because he's had really bad experiences. Not only because he's, you know, a survivor and needs something somebody else has, but because he's Middle Eastern and people still remember that those are the bad people. You're surrounded by bloodthirsty zombies and you're worried about that, really. And then Carl goes back and gives him food and says he's sorry. We're going to see that man again, because why would Rick? Rick didn't even hear. He made a point of saying he didn't hear all of it. He said, I heard what he said, well, most of it. Rick didn't hear it. So how does he all of a sudden, if he's dying or whatever happened, I personally don't think he is. But if he is, then why would he remember that specific comment that he didn't even hear?
Something comes up later, I think.
Yeah, I think it does too. But because it's it's in the Quran. I don't know if I mentioned that. I looked it up because it was just too perfect a comment. And it sounds something that would either be, I know it's not in the Bible, but I thought maybe it would be in something a pope said, or something like that. And as it turns out, it was in the Quran. So it makes perfect sense why he would say it, but why would Rick repeat it when he didn't even hear the whole thing? So that's a clue that we won't have solved, probably, who knows for how long. But in closing, I think this is a viable possibility. What do you think? Possibility or completely stupid?
Everything's a possibility.
Yeah, that's true. Anything could happen. Anything could happen in the zombie apocalypse. But
you don't know what the writers are going to finish up with.
And they showed again on the 100th thing that they had actually filmed, and I already knew this, but seeing it, they showed it. They actually filmed each character being killed by Negan with Lucille, each one. So maybe maybe somebody's contract was up and they're like, you know what, we got you on film being killed, so sign that contract for what we want. I don't know. Clearly it wasn't Glenn or Abraham. They probably, I don't know about Abraham. He didn't come, that's kind of weird that he didn't come to the 100th. I guess he felt like he wasn't part of the 100. But boy, Glenn was pleased as punch to be there. And I just don't know. I really believe that Jesus has something to do with the Saviors more than he's saying. And if he's going to the wolves, then that's a possibility. However, wouldn't he have, I guess he couldn't have the W on him unless he's got it somewhere else on his body. He just seems like he's gone out of his way to look the part, so people started calling him Jesus. His name can't be Jesus, because he doesn't look of Latin or Mexican heritage, and his name would be Jesus. So I just think that we should keep our eye on Jesus. Watch what he does when he's in a scene that he shouldn't be. It shouldn't be on him. It's not him talking. And see if he's looking around and taking notes in his mind. What's he doing? Because there has to be something that we've missed, or maybe I've missed. Anyways, please put your comments down below. We can talk through this, because I think sometimes we all need to talk through what happens on The Walking Dead. Pay attention. And so this is a possibility. I'm just, it just is. What do you think it's all about? Where is Jesus going? Is Negan capable of running everything. I know he doesn't go all the time when they go out to gather stuff. Is that one of the times? I wish we had a way of gearing when Jesus wasn't there and Negan was at the hill at the Savior's compound. That's what I wish. And how bad do you want Gregory dead? Me too. Any last words? Please have some.
We'll wait and see.
We will. We will. Okay, well, this is Tara.
And Bill.
And we are so happy you watched this video. Please subscribe. I have scintillating, I don't. I have reviews, and but sometimes they're scintillating. I have reviews that for some reason went somewhere. I'm looking for them on YouTube. They have to be there. I reviewed it, and I have like 3 reviews that are scattering away. So I made a new channel, and you can always go to www.terrasindependentvoice.com. I do a lot of independent films and independent entertainment. I also am starting to do major, well, I've been doing it, but I'm starting to do more major entertainment, such as The Walking Dead, which I've always talked about from the beginning. But I am actually in the beginning thoughts of having a major motion picture and major entertainment site. And we will see how that turns out. I thank you for coming. Thank you, thank you. And please subscribe, hit notifications, like the video if you do, and go ahead and leave me a, start a conversation. Get a conversation going. I would really like to hear everybody's thoughts. Okay, well, I am gone. On to do a video about Funko Pops, which I also have a channel about, and also Disney pins, which I also have a channel about. So, this overworked journalist, entertainment journalist, is out of here.